2014 edition of the Nonprofit Insights webinar hosted by VolunteerMatch. This webinar series is meant to give you the chance to learn about big picture topics, trends, and issues in nonprofit technology and volunteer engagement from experts and very exciting people. I am Sherry Ilson. I'm a Director of Engagement at VolunteerMatch, and I produce and host these webinars, which is one of the funnest parts of my job. Today's webinar is a really cool one, all about board development, specifically how to apply board development strategies to create a future-thinking board for your nonprofit organization. The world is changing very quickly, and nonprofits need to keep up, and your board is a very important piece of that. So we have two really impressive speakers here that are going to walk us through some ideas for board development with that in mind. Before I introduce them, however, I want to go through a few logistics. The questions are already coming in about this, and the answer is yes. We are recording the webinar, and we'll be posting it to YouTube after the fact and sending each of you an email with that link, as well as a link to the slide deck and some follow-up resources. So you will be hearing from us afterwards, and you'll be able to share this with friends and colleagues. If you have questions or issues for the speakers or for myself during the session, please input them into that chat box in the application. You can also participate in the conversation and ask questions on Twitter using the hashtag VMLearn. And I believe that's it for logistics. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our awesome speakers for today. We've got Jenifer Holland, who joined BoardSource in 2012. Jenifer has over 15 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, and she's a skilled facilitator, trainer, and project manager. Before she joined BoardSource, Jenifer was a program manager for training and technical assistance at the Finance Project, where she delivered financing and sustainability training, planning, and technical assistance to groups all over the country. She's also contributed to publications on topics relating to financing, and she's developed policy tools and fiscal management resources. So all of that really important financial and admin management stuff, she's your gal, clearly. Jenifer also founded JG Consulting, which provides business consulting to nonprofit organizations in grant making, program development, and fundraising. One really interesting project she worked on, she helped shape a 3-year, $4.5 million program to seed social purpose alternative staffing firms in the Gulf Coast following Hurricane Katrina. Those are the kinds of projects you don't hear a lot about, but end up creating the critical infrastructure needed for recovery in those regions. Also, Jenifer's professional experience includes board service for an urban nonprofit focused on community university partnerships. So we're extremely excited to have Jenifer with us. Our other speaker, Shayla Price, is the Executive Director for the National Search Dog Alliance. She brings more than 10 years of experience in strategic planning, marketing, and leadership development, including a research associate position in Kampala, Uganda. So, wow, awesome. Kind of jealous. Shayla is really passionate about helping individuals and organizations to achieve their social impact. And her projects have involved everything from supporting the redesign of a talent recruitment strategy for a nonprofit, to assessing a social media plan, to developing brand messaging campaign for an entire state agency. She also led a cross-functional team that increased access to nutritious food for poverty-stricken families. So she has a really wide breadth of experience. Shayla was named one of Ebony Magazine's Heroes Next Door and honored with the Daily Points of Light Award. She is the author of an ebook called Leading from Within, Become the Mindful Leader, Nonprofit's Desire. And she's also written about nonprofit leadership for the Huffington Post, for VolunteerMatch, and for other publications. So really excited to have someone with Shayla's background and experience here to provide her perspective and expertise. Welcome, ladies. We're so excited. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Jenifer to begin talking about board development.
Great. Thank you so very much, Sherry, for that really thoughtful and complimentary introduction. I would just add to my bio, I know you already heard a lot about me, but I will just, in the spirit of fun and setting expectations for our next hour together, share that I was born on the West Coast, but have lived on the East Coast my last 14 years. And so you'll hear the East Coast speed of speech because I want to be thoughtful with your time. So if I'm going a little bit fast, that's why I want to make sure that all of the components that VolunteerMatch has rightfully planned for today get their due space. But do know that we've got the Q&A at the end, so if there's anything that you want extra detail on, please do let me know. So with that, I'm going to contribute the components around a future-friendly nonprofit board from the BoardSource perspective. And if you're not already familiar with us, we ourselves are a nonprofit. We have been in the nonprofit space and been doing our work for 25 years. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we do our work across the country nationally and in some cases internationally as well. The only other thing I'd add to the bullets you see on the slide here is that one of the things that we do, and those of you that are chief executive officers or EDs, executive directors on the line might have seen from us, is every 2 to 3 years we do something called the Governance Index, which is a survey of CEOs and also board members around board practices, because obviously this is the area that we spend most of our time, if not all of our time, thinking about and focusing on. And so we want to know what current practices are. How many board meetings you have a year? How long are they? Above and beyond that, does your board have term limits? Do you have a recently updated conflict of interest policy? And so you might be very interested in that research as conversation starters with your boards or among your board members, because I often find that it's really, really helpful to go ahead and just have a sense of what else is happening across the country. So do know that when I refer to the index or the governance index, that's a research piece I'll be talking about and that you can actually download from our website for free if you're interested. So I can't commend VolunteerMatch enough, and also Shayla's contributions and the pieces you'll be hearing from her later around this topic of building a future-friendly nonprofit board. I think it's important to note that this isn't just an area of interest in the nonprofit sector. It's something that corporate boards are thinking about a lot. And in fact, McKinsey article, which just came out last month in February of 2014, had the following to say about this. Directors still spend the bulk of their time on quarterly reports, audit reviews, budgets, and compliance. 70% of their time is not atypical, instead of on matters crucial to the future prosperity and direction of the business. And so even though it's sector with respect to how are our boards spending their time, yes, need to be good stewards of the money and the resources of a nonprofit and play a fiduciary role, but we also need to be forward-looking. And the way that BoardSource thinks about this is in a couple of different ways. What you're looking at in front of you is a schematic called the board building cycle board, whether it's 8 members or 12 members or 35 members, but just recognizing that each and every board member that cycles off and each and every new board member that cycles on and comes onto your board for a new term has an impact on the culture of your board, on the way that your board operates during meetings and in the boardroom, and frankly, on the way that your board operates between board meetings through committee work as well. And so this is a conceptual model that we developed that really recognizes the fact that a future-friendly board doesn't just start with getting the right people. 4 of these spaces have been circled. We don't have time today to focus in depth on each and every one of these pieces, but I will focus on the 4 that you see there. So the identify step is the first step. Who do you need on the board? Well, we need to know what we need. So there are a couple kinds of committees have a nominating committee, which is maybe an ad hoc committee that operates for a short period of time when some people are cycling off and on and you need to fill board seats. What we're seeing more and more of at BoardSource is the governance committee, a group that operates year-round that doesn't only help to support filling board slots, but also thinks about the kinds of things that helps your board to be forward-looking, not just who's on the board, how those meetings run, what trainings do we need, how well are we performing. And so another way to look at this is to sort of think about, okay, if in the family tree, so to speak, of committees that have a responsibility for infusing the board with new talent, it has traditionally been the nominating committee. You might also have something called a board development committee that takes on a few of those roles that I talked about earlier, board training, board self-assessment. But the governance committee is one that is overarching sort of all of those tasks. And again, to follow through on my promise, when we did our governance index research in 2010, there was 68% of folks had a governance or a nominating committee. When we did it again in 2012, the most recent period, that was an uptick of about 5% when you look at those numbers together. So I wanted to ask you, with that as our foundation, what does your board have? Does your board have a nominating committee that operates on a short-term basis to identify candidates and fill slots? Does your board have a governance committee? You may also call it a board development committee, but a year-round committee that does education and self-assessment and supports board practices. Do you have a combined one, other, or don't know? And with that, I'll actually ask Sherry how things are looking on her end, since I'm not managing the poll from here.
All right, so I just launched the poll. So folks, please choose one of the answers, and we'll leave it open for about 30 seconds or so until most of you have voted, and then I'll close it and we'll be able to see the results. Interesting. I can see them already. You guys can't. Also, Jenifer, there's been a few comments that people are having trouble hearing you. I'm not seeing, we're not having any trouble on our end, but if you have a volume control on your end, and folks, if you're having trouble hearing Jenifer, make sure that the volume on your own devices is turned up as well.
Great, and I'll do what I can on my end too. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, why don't we close it and take a look at the results. So, Jenifer, can you see those results?
I am clicking to be able to see them. I actually cannot from where I am, although if I minimize my screen, perhaps I can. But I'm fine to hear them along with the rest.
I will, yes, I will just read them out to you. So, 25% said that their board has a nominating committee. 14% said that they have a governance committee. 23% said that they have a combined one. 7% said other, and 30% said not applicable, none of the above, or don't know.
Tremendous. Well, that's extremely helpful, and I guess there's some really nice lessons to be learned there. I wish all of us, all 700 of us or so, were in a room together today so that we could do some peer-to-peer learning and sharing. Between all of us, consult like myself or play a different role. Perhaps you're not actively working with a board right now. But if you don't know, it might be something worth checking out. Go back to your committee structure, see what committees have been listed. Perhaps go back to your bylaws, see what those say about starting committees. And I will share with you that if you're interested in this topic around Charter's feedback on that. So I wanted to ask you that question by way of establishing, excuse me, the idea that, hey, if we want our board to be future-friendly and future-focused and have a grasp of our strategies that we're using to build low-income housing, to educate and tutor young people, to engage in environmental protection, if we want to do all those things and we want a good board to help guide them, then the question becomes, who's responsible for building that good board? And do we have a functional nominating committee, a functional governance committee? Are those folks equipped with the best these days that, finding good volunteers can not always be easy, and we want to make the volunteer opportunity that we have as appealing as possible in order to have that future-focused board. So the next thing you want to do once you know who it is that's looking and helping to cultivate good board members, and by the way, I did not, but through delegation, the committees do a lot of that prep work to create a good process. But you want to be thinking strategically about who you need. Who does your organization need to think about your key strategies over the next 2, 5, and 10 years? Now, I want to clarify here that I'm not suggesting that the only strategy here is waiting until our current board members term off and just populating our board with new people. I think there's a two-way street here, that part of building a future-friendly board is working intensely and intentionally with the board members we have on board now, and part of it is thinking about recruiting the right people for the future. It's both and, not either or. And some of the things that you can do to help be forward-looking with the folks you have on board now is through your meeting agendas and, again, your training and some of these other components. But with respect to recruitment, we want to be very articulate about what skills we need. We want to know what gaps might exist, and we want to know how do we describe the skills of the ideal candidate. When we're having those meetings with people and perhaps they're deciding between 2 and 3 different board positions, how do we get them excited about ours and articulate to them what kinds of projects that they can be involved in. So some of you may use something like this. It's called a board matrix, and it's just a great at-a-glance snapshot way to know how balanced is our board now around skills, expertise. You can see there's a category here for fundraising abilities. You can see there's a category here for this leader, strategist, visionary piece. And so if your board was composed, I'll just give you an example. You see worker bee as the bottom line there. If your board was composed 100% of worker bees because they were composed during a startup phase, when your nonprofit actually did need people writing grants and setting up gala dinners themselves on the board, there's nothing wrong with that, but it may be the fact that your nonprofit has grown and evolved since then, and you need a different mix of folks. This would be great things like age, ethnicity, and community connections. So this is something that if you're not already using it and it seems like something of value to you, by all means, it should be something that you customize according to your own needs. So the next point I wanted to make is that, of course, it's not just all about hard skills. It's not just all about having that accountant or that lawyer board, although that is board members that we're recruiting are people that are going to work well on a team, that are going to respond well to committee chairs and to board chairs, that are not going to hide their good ideas for a year before they share them. If we want to be future-focused and future-friendly, we need folks that feel confident putting their ideas into the mix at board meetings. And also being willing to develop certain skills if they don't already have them. I think that's a big one that's often overlooked. You can see here there's an example of the board member agreement here, which is a great tool if you're not already using that. I'll refer back to that in a minute. So here's step 5, board needs. We went through some tool leadership, asking current board members and others to suggest potential candidates. And I'll take that one step further. Obviously, VolunteerMatch does tremendous matching around these kinds of things. I looked online today just to see what kind of board opportunities might be in my zip code, and there were 28 that related specifically to board service way, shape, or form. So in portals these days that I encourage folks to take advantage of. But cultivate those leaders and then recruit them. I think it's really important not to overlook the fact that we don't want to minimize requirements. This could be the worst thing ever to recruit somebody you're really excited about, but if you told them there'd be no work between board meetings, and in fact they're expected to serve on a committee that could take 2 to 5 hours between meetings, that can be tough, right? So the last step is evaluating your board, and there are several slides on this. I'm not going to go through each one of them in a play-by-play kind of way, but I will say that based on that balancing act I talked about earlier between working well with the board you have now, vis-a-vis recruiting a new board, this is a great way to help grow and develop your current board. Ask them how well they think they're doing. Ask them about what they think they should be doing, how they think they should be performing, and their actual performance. It's a great way for boards to also model accountability. If you're going to evaluate the CEO, then it makes sense for the board to evaluate itself as well. Here's a sample from our work. Something like this could set the stage for a lot of really good discussions around where we're headed. And to the point of our topic today, you look at strategy there, it's the second to the last one. So this is a board that needs help beefing up its future-friendly approach and focus. So with that, I'll leave it around that tool and kind of leave that as some fodder for thought in our Q&A. And I know that Sherry has thoughtfully included a quote that I wanted to share with you as well that speaks to how diversity can really enhance and engage your future-focused board as well. And with that, I will turn it back over to Sherry and Shayla.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jenifer. And some great questions were coming in. I'm going to save most of them until the end. But I do there was one question, which is, can the board matrix that you showed be accessed online anywhere?
There are aspects of it that are in our community resources portion of our website, which is a link that I believe Sherry sent out earlier, so I would check there. And then, of course, you'll have this example in your slide deck. So the short answer is not necessarily particularly in this format, but yes, from a substance point of view.
Great, thank you. And the McKinsey article you referenced towards the beginning, I know that that was research done on for-profit companies, but we've had several people interested in finding that research. Is that something people could find just by Googling?
We can link to that article in the materials that are sent out.
Well, let's now turn things over to Shayla so we can hear about board development from her perspective as well. So here we go. Great, and Shayla, take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Jenifer did a great job really showing us from her perspective, from BoardSource, what they provide. I'm currently an executive director, and I'm giving you more experiences, practical strategies you can use. And first, building a future-friendly board means molding your board members' mindset to be forward thinkers. In the end, you want everyone to be comfortable with changes. So similar to the first days of school, your nonprofit is basically the teacher, and you want to establish standards up front, and you want to first begin by identifying board prospects. So we're going to go through that: identifying, engaging, and then retaining. Okay, so with past experiences, I think Julius Caesar said this best: of experience is the teacher of all things. But what type of experiences are you looking for in your board prospects? You should be looking for risk-taking, people who are bold decision makers, and individuals really love to take responsibility for their mistakes. They learn from them. For example, when I served on a nominating committee for a literacy nonprofit, we would ask candidates up front, how do you feel about taking risks? That's how people define risk. Did they make calculated risks? And did they provide careful consideration when they were making these risks? Did they look at all the choices? So you want folks on your board who are not only providing solutions, but you also want people who have good reasoning behind those solutions. Understanding their past experiences will help you learn more about the board prospects, and in the future will build you a better board. Soft skills. Jenifer mentioned this. This is a great article. I found it on Inc.com. It was published recently, of how soft skills are hard to assess and even hard to succeed without. This article discusses the importance of soft skills and how these skills shouldn't be considered an afterthought in the interviewing process. And that's important in nonprofits. Just recently, I consulted with a nonprofit that focuses on health and fitness, and they wanted to add 4 more board members, and the conversation came around 3 qualities all the time when we talked about future friendly. First one was time management. They wanted someone who can meet deadlines and also understood urgency. Flexibility was the second one, an individual who can adapt to situations quickly and doesn't get frazzled by change. And the last one, they wanted someone who was a critical observer, someone who had a keen sense of the present moment and understood that their actions affected other people. So what does that look like? When you're in the interview process, for example, with time management, ask for what this person goes through in a day-to-day, I guess, activities, to really get a sense of what they're doing for their time management, because that will help your board in the future.
Shayla, can you define, for those of us who aren't familiar with the term, what soft skills are?
Well, soft skills are the non-technical skills. So this could be a person who can build relationships easily, a person who meets deadlines all the time, or who can really get a sense of what we're doing from a non-technical side. That's not your marketing. That's not somebody who does great numbers when it comes to finances. So soft skills is that your human quality, who you are as a person.
Great, thank you.
And I have a poll for the next, so we can get into the next slide. So do you ask board prospects about industry trends in their professions in the interview process? Do you ask them?
All right, and the poll has launched, so we'll see how people respond, and then I'll close it and we'll be able to take a look at the results. Okay, why don't we close it? There we go. And I will share the results. And Shayla, can you see that, or?
No, I cannot. Okay,
weird. Sometimes presenters can see the results, sometimes they can't. I'll have to figure out why that is, but this one's simple. 22% of people said that they do ask their board prospects about industry trends in their profession, and 78% said they don't. Although I have a feeling that a lot more people will be saying yes after today.
Yes. So that's what the next slide we're going to cover. When you identify board prospects, you want to ask them about what's happening in their industry. So what are board prospects reading? Is it the latest material? Ask them who are their favorite authors or experts in the field. You want individuals who are knowledgeable about their craft, because future-friendly people are people that are aware of what's happening and they're watching trends. Also, you want an individual who can connect the dots. Can that person make a connection between their field and your nonprofit? This takes their knowledge a step further, and you can see what people are thinking and how they can make your nonprofit really succeed with their help, because they can connect the dots. Also, in this conversation, understanding their trends, you can discover the person's genuine interest, and this will help with committee placements, such as marketing or finance, or placing them on the fundraising committee. And I just recently was just working on multiple nominating committees. People really want to add their personality, and they want to connect the dots. When I was a member of a committee we brought on a chef, and the nonprofit was focused on the arts, but his culinary experience helped us open up an exhibit, and that connected amateur artists with new chefs in the local area, and we actually brought food to life. So we had the opportunity to work together with chefs and artists so that we can bring a new display to our local culture. And next, last month, identifying board prospects. Make sure they have an individual development plan. So we talk about goals, we talk about values, but are they actually reaching those goals and values? So you want to ask that on the interview. What was the topic of maybe your last professional development seminar? When was that seminar? The interconnection. How do your values and goals, that board prospect, really relate to the nonprofit? How will that help us in the future? So those are just a few questions to ask when you're sitting down, talking, having a conversation with your board prospects. And the last one is really critical, time investment. You want to identify someone who has time and not just passing time. And that's vital in this role as a board because you're giving them decision-making power, and you want them to have time to do this. So people who value their own development will value the development of your nonprofit. So with engaging board members, now we have these great people on board, and you want them to support your organization as it moves forward. So how do you engage them? And we can begin with using brainstorming prompts. These are really cool. The first one is, wouldn't it be great if? This sparks imagination, helps members set their own goals for the nonprofit. If I had total control, it gives this person the power to make decisions. Teamwork is great, but the prompt gives board members the opportunity to be the captain of their own boat. So if they had total control, what would they do? And the last one, because we have excess resources, we can. This eliminates the mentality of lack. It allows board members to focus on creating a vision first and then figuring a way to accomplish it despite obstacles. Cheerleaders. So we want people who are motivated, who are engaged. We want to keep them constantly understanding what the nonprofit is doing. So you want to have guest speakers, but not just any guest speaker. You want to invite speakers who are directly involved in the board decisions so board members can see how their decisions directly affect the future of the nonprofit. So if you have a food pantry, let's say, and you have a recipient who receives those meals, have them come and talk about how their resources are providing for them. You want to make that human connection. Also with attendance, if possible, invite community leaders and even staff members to be present at the board meetings. A presence shows board members that other people have a vested interest in the future actions of the nonprofit. It holds them accountable so that they can make better decisions. Door prizes, have a little fun, but be strategic about it. You don't want necessarily those frivolous door prizes like ink pens or refrigerator magnets. Instead, I received a coffee mug with the nonprofit's mission statement. You can also give a free ticket to the nonprofit's upcoming event. And even if you work with kids, if you have a nonprofit that tutors kids, have one of the children write a handwritten letter expressing the importance of the tutoring program, and that can be given as a door prize. And the next question is, how do you currently motivate your board members? And you can just type that in the chat box.
All right, so far no one has typed anything in. Oh, okay, here we go. We've got a nice lunch, frequent updates on success, team building exercises, pizza, recognition, food and snacks, sharing stories, photos from the kids and the groups being helped. Nice dinners out, travel opportunities, updates, private retreat, a gala.
Those are all really nice.
There's a lot coming in. I wish everyone could see this. I have to find some way for people to be able to chat with each other beyond Twitter. I'm working on it, guys. It'll show up one of these webinars. If anyone has suggestions for an application that allows people to chat with each other within a webinar application, let me know. This is wonderful. We'll share some of these. Maybe we'll do a blog post that just shares all these ideas so everyone can see them, because this is great. And Shayla, I'll definitely send them all to you as well, and Jenifer. Just thanking them seems to be a huge theme. It's so simple and so beautiful to just a smile and a thank you.
And that's so true. And I think motivating them using the techniques, food, a ticket, or just saying thank you really helps. And that's what it means to be a cheerleader for your board members. So thank you, everyone, for participating and writing in the chat box. Next is cross-sector collaboration. And this article was featured in the Guardian.com, how to collaborate and partner with other sectors as a small charity. And this article discusses how cross-sector collaboration helps nonprofits improve their services and also increase their reach. And the big hint I got from this article was that the trick is to keep things simple and to prepare well. Keep it simple and prepare well. You can do this. I actually had this opportunity to work on service trips. And a service trip was basically we traveled to the location of our grant recipients. On a guided tour, we saw the programs in action. We got a sense of how valuable the local businesses, the government agencies, and other nonprofits were involved in the operation of our nonprofit. So you give board members an inside taste of what's happening and who's involved, and so that they can see that it's not just the nonprofit that's running, it's other businesses, it's other nonprofits, and even sometimes government agencies. You can also invite different industry experts to be part of your board meetings. So bring in educators, police officers, any profession that's unrelated. And you want that expert to discuss how he or she is solving their own problems in their particular field. Then that board chair or ED can show how that same method can be used in the nonprofit. This collaboration will help nonprofits stay relevant so that we are working together to really solve the problems in our community. Personal commitments. This is a doozy. The first one is I will accomplish X before the next meeting. Near the end of the meeting, you want board members with the opportunity to make their commitments. This focuses individuals on the need to demonstrate some type of action to move the nonprofit forward. And don't back down when folks say they can't think of one. Instead, give them options from a list of personal commitments they can make. This, in the end, will help eliminate any future what we call fights with people saying, oh, I needed to make this commitment and I didn't. So this really helps giving them an option or actually just saying, I will accomplish X before the next meeting. Visuals. Post those commitments on a flip chart or a sticky note on a bulletin board. Publicly displaying those commitments hold people accountable. And when you do this, people won't overpromise and not deliver. In the end, you want them to promise and deliver, and that's important. And reminders, send reminders of their personal commitments. We are all human. People forget. So I even receive friendly emails, phone calls, and even text messages sometimes say, Shayla, you made this personal commitment. Don't forget it. Retaining your board members. Now that you have these great people on board, they're engaged, how do you keep them focused and on your board for life, basically? And we have another poll. How often do you ask for feedback from your board members? Monthly, quarterly, or yearly?
All right, I just launched the poll, so people can have 30 seconds or so to respond. All right, we'll leave it open for another 10 seconds or so, so get your answers in if you haven't answered yet. Okay, great. I'm going to close it. All right. So the results were 39% said that they ask for feedback monthly, 29% said quarterly, and 32% said yearly. So it's basically an even distribution, which is really interesting.
Well, I would always recommend to at least do it quarterly, but if you also want to do it monthly and have those conversations, that's the way to go. And I'm just happy everyone's giving feedback, getting that feedback. So let's discuss that a little bit more. To retain your board members, ask for that feedback. First, solicit anonymous feedback. It's good to have those conversations off the cuff, but solicit anonymous feedback from surveys such as SurveyMonkey or Wufoo. You want to give your board members an opportunity to get honest answers. Also, updates. And this is not updates for your nonprofit. You want to get updates on the person. Do they have any changes happening in their lives, new goals, activities, or even a change in the time commitment they have to offer to your nonprofit? This provides vital information on whether you're meeting the board's needs. Also, improvements. Be upfront. Ask what challenges are affecting the nonprofit or the board. What needs to change? Actually ask them, how would you change it? This gives them opportunity to develop a clear plan and also gives you a different perspective on the issue. Create a valued culture. You want to set norms, but you just don't want any norms like we're going to meet on time or we're going to have this particular meeting at the same venue every month. You want norms that establish forward thinking. So, for example, we can start off with, we will be results driven. We will include data in our solutions. Compassion will be part of our decision making. These types of norms keep everyone focused and that everyone is a valued member of this culture. Acknowledgements. Respect other people's bold ideas. We want people to be giving us these wild left field ideas. We want them to be encouraged. And lastly, implementation of ideas. Actually carry out the board members' suggestions. Board members understand that you can offer them fame and fortune, but they want to be valued. And according to this great personal finance expert, he says the best way to show a VIP, in our case our board members, you value them, is to actually use their advice and follow up and say, hey, I used your advice. It went well. Support members' goals. Give them opportunity to speak at award ceremonies or any public speaking events that may be happening in your organization. You also want to invite them to workshops and seminars. We already talked about how we want forward thinkers to value their professional development. So in my experience, if you have an extra ticket for a professional development workshop, invite them so that they can get a deeper insight about your organization and show that the person that you're committed to their progress and not only just the nonprofit. And provide recommendations. Just show them that you understand their time commitment and that you value their commitment to the organization and that you recognize what they're doing. So in the letter, you can acknowledge that, how the person has helped the organization move forward, and how they have provided insight to help the nonprofit that would help them in 5 or 10 years from now. So be precise in that letter. You want to thank them for being forward thinkers. And also show appreciation, and this came up when we want to motivate them. So give board members awards and certificates. For example, a certificate of achievement for thinking outside the box. Highlight their achievements, not just on the board, but their personal achievements. So you can find out about their personal achievements via conversation, or a quick Google search, or even in that feedback survey. And lastly, say thank you. A simple thank you goes a long way, and just saying thank you for being a forward thinker really brightens people up and tells your board members that you care about them and that we're in this for the long run. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shayla. Okay, I am going to take back control of our slides so that we can move into the exciting Q&A portion. So give me 1 second to get to the right part of the presentation. I was so interested in fielding everyone's questions and participating on Twitter that I lost my place. Here we go. Okay, it's time for Q&A. So feel free to continue submitting questions in the chat box and on Twitter. I will be monitoring them. I have a few initial questions to ask our speakers as well. So first of all, this actually hasn't come up yet in the questions, and I am extremely surprised because it's a question I have as both a nonprofit professional and a board member of nonprofits. Financial commitment. So historically, board members have made a commitment to give a certain amount of money or raise a certain amount of money for nonprofits. How does this work with the strategy of building a future-friendly board? Maybe some of your board members might be younger, not be quite as financially stable. How should nonprofits that have in the past asked their board members to make a financial commitment, how do you deal with this potential conflict? And this is really a question for either of you.
Well, this is Jenifer. I'll start in, and Shayla may have some things to add. But I can share that this is certainly something that we ask on our BoardSource Nonprofit Governance Index. Do you have a policy, a giving policy, or a give or get policy? And so we've got some interesting data on that. It's not in front of me right now, but I'd be happy to follow up with folks, and we can actually send a copy of the report out to folks so everyone just has it. What we know is pretty vital to the sustainability of the nonprofit overall is that there is 100% board giving. And by that I mean if it's a board of 8 members give in some way, shape, or form. There are certainly nonprofits out there where they've developed some kind of giving floor. You need to give X% of a certain line item, or you need to give a certain hard dollar figure. And that has worked for some nonprofits. I think the caveat there is that certainly if you are interested in board diversity and invested in it, which I touched on very briefly earlier, maybe you have clients on your board, a cross-section of socioeconomic status is represented, Sherry, you mentioned age. Sometimes that can't work. And so one of the ways around that is to craft a giving statement that leaves some room and leaves some flexibility and says every board member will give an amount that's personally significant to them, or will give an amount, or will make this nonprofit within the top 3 of their giving priorities, because typically 1 and 2 are folks giving to their houses of worship and or their alumni institutions. So there are ways to phrase that where you ask for a financial commitment, but you leave some flexibility so that you're not harming, again, the diversity of your board and the overall board culture around everyone giving. The last thing I'll add before concluding this part of the comments is simply that keeping that anonymous, folks have found is really important, so that the focus really is on the giving itself and not who gives more.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, Shayla.
I also think that becomes part of the acknowledgement. Everyone has to understand that we give resources to our nonprofit in a certain way. So if you have to do a plan of a particular amount and the rest is given in time or this given in talent, and also people who may not have that financial commitment can also crowdfund. Maybe they can fundraise for their portion of the gift. So there's different opportunities out there. I don't want to make financial commitment a deterrent for anyone who wants to join the board and be part of it.
Great, thank you. All right, the next question is, a lot of people are wondering if there are specific places or strategies you two would suggest for finding great board prospects? You both talked about what to look for, how to contact.
Well, I'll be quick. The link that everybody has in your chat function is a link to the BoardSource Board Recruitment Center, and there's a pretty exhaustive list of national, state, and regional board matching programs. So I would just encourage everybody to check out our website, and no matter where you are, there's at least 4 national board, look for board members, sometimes local matching programs as well. So tons of electronic resources. Please do visit the Board Recruitment Center.
And yes, online, go to LinkedIn, using your groups and associations on LinkedIn, as well as posting on VolunteerMatch. I've found some great people using VolunteerMatch. And if you know a specific type of skill that you want that board member to have, go to the certain professionals. If you need a lawyer, if you need an accountant, go to those associations so that they can provide you maybe a list of people that would be great for serving on a nonprofit.
Great. Yeah, I just did a search on VolunteerMatch for keyword board to see what came up, and there are over 6,000 opportunities on VolunteerMatch right now, which means lots of nonprofits are using the site to engage with board members. I also want to reiterate LinkedIn. I think that was a great idea, Shayla, and actually LinkedIn has something called LinkedIn Board Member Connect for nonprofits, which is special recruitment tools that nonprofits can use to connect with board members on LinkedIn. So that's another really great online tool. And finally, yeah, I have been to a couple real-life offline board match events. There's the Volunteer Center here in San Francisco puts on an amazing board match event each year. And I have friends that have joined boards because they connected at a board match event. So it's a really great place to meet people that are hungry to get involved with a cause. So that's great. Okay. Next question. We still have a few minutes, which is great. So there were some really interesting questions that came in around not necessarily engagement of board members, but actually training board members. So onboarding process, orientation process, and let's say a board member might be missing some of the soft skills that you would hope they have, or you want to help board members learn how to fundraise so they can be a better ambassador for the organization. Can you two speak to that a little bit and some tips for nonprofits that want to try and help train their board members in some of these things?
This is Shayla, so I'll go. First, I would start, especially using in a board development meeting or a board retreat, start with those brainstorming prompts to get everybody thinking about where they want to go in the future. And if you want to give them the skill of fundraising, let them start fundraising. I was part of a New Leaders Council, and the first thing they let us do is gave us time to actually call people that are family and friends and just start fundraising now. The best way you can learn is through experience. So we started calling and see how much money we would raise just by calling folks and not even going out and talking to them. So give them that actual experience and match them up with people who have skills. So if you know someone who's a great time manager, match them up with another board member who's not doing so well in that area, or give them tools and provide them with opportunities to different workshops. You want to develop them the best way possible professionally because they will be a better board member in the end for you.
And this is Jenifer. I'll just chime in. I would suggest that if you're not already doing some kind of board self-assessment, ours is fairly comprehensive, but it doesn't have to be an onerous process. You could write a list of kind of the 10 most important questions yourself But one of those could be, where do you feel you need more education in your fulfilling your responsibilities of being a board member? So I'd be an advocate for making sure that whatever training topics you pick are driven by data from the board members themselves. Where do they feel like they need education? And from there, the sky's the limit. I love the shadowing idea that Shayla just mentioned. Board mentoring programs are good. I think in addition to those kind of board-led options, some third-party training options might include your local management support organization. If you're not already tied into your state association of nonprofits, they often do trainings. Your local United Way may have some trainings. And sometimes, I wouldn't rule them out. Sometimes they're low cost or free trainings. So don't feel like you can't at least explore that avenue because it may be less expensive than you think.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think the lesson here is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you don't have to do it all on your own. There are so many resources, both locally and digitally, to help you, including BoardSource and folks like Shayla, that don't feel like you have to kind of flail around in the dark figuring it all out. The resources are there for you. I think we have time for one final question before we wrap things up. This one is a little bit of a delicate subject, but it's come up a bunch of times in people's questions. What if it's not working out? What if there's a board member who just is never engaged, or for some other reason you really need to break up with? Or you feel like they've sort of had their time on the board and it's really time to make space for someone else? How do you break up with a board member?
I love that framing. I can't help but smile on this end of the phone. I'll share that BoardSource actually has a publication called Taming the Troublesome Board Member, and it's a book with a picture of an octopus with 8 unruly tentacles hanging out all over the place. So I'm kind of glad this came up. One of our questions in the governance index is, do you agree or not agree with this statement? Generally, conversations at board meetings are driven by just a few individuals, kind of one bully, so to speak, or 2 bullies. And 48% of folks agreed with that. So it's not at all uncommon. Don't feel lonely if you feel like you've got someone that is providing troublesome behavior in the boardroom. For strategies, I'd say there's at least 2 places to start, probably 3 or more. But the ones that I'd kind of highlight are your board chair. How talented, fair, well-respected, neutral is he or she? Can your board chair have a confidential conversation with that individual? Somewhat along the lines of what Shayla suggested. I mean, we really should be checking in with our board members regularly to see is something going on at home, what's going on with your schedule. So don't rule out the step of giving that troublesome board member his or her own voice to perhaps explain their behavior. Now, I'm realistic. I know that may not always solve the challenge. Your next couple of things are really making sure you've got your house in order with respect to how your board is structured. What does it say in your bylaws? So board chair, bylaws, and then also your governance committee may be helpful here. But make sure that you have looked at your bylaws recently. Sometimes folks write them when they incorporate, and then they easily become 12 and 15 and 35 years old. But you want to be looking for whatever that clause is that says the conditions upon which a board member can be removed. And build it into your board training. Make sure your board members know your bylaws. Make sure that you have some kind of board member agreement when you onboard that person. So the sample that was in my slides, I can't refer to the exact slide number now, so that it's easy to hold people accountable on the back end when they are misbehaving around what they promised to do on the front end. So board chair, bylaws, your board member agreement, which is something that a governance committee can help with. Those would be my 3 strategies I'd suggest.
Yes, I think that's great. I don't have anything to add. You want to have that conversation, and you want to know to make sure that you're following all the rules and the bylaws, because that's where it will end. But you got to have that conversation first.
Wonderful. Thank you both. And just a quick warning to Shayla and Jenifer, there have been so many follow-up questions asking about the specific resources and strategies that the two of you mentioned because you are such experts. So we're going to try and do a roundup of all that, folks, and as I said, maybe do some follow-up blog posts on this topic so that we all are able to benefit from all of this awesome information. So it's now time to end, and before I do, I want to make a quick plug for next month's webinar, which is actually fast approaching. We are going to be talking with GuideStar and the Technology Affinity Group about how nonprofit data and volunteers can save the world. And that's coming up on April 8th, which is during National Volunteer Week. And you can sign up for it in our Learning Center at learn.volunteermatch.org. So, thank you so much, Jenifer and Shayla. I learned a lot. I know everyone else did as well. This has been so interesting and useful. Thanks to all of you attendees for listening and asking such wonderful questions. And we hope to see you again on a future Nonprofit Insights webinar. And I'm seeing that the link that I posted for Taming the Troublesome Board Member isn't working, so we will send that out as well. Thanks again, everyone, and take care.